This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com. This episode of Sketchup a 3D Toolbox is brought to you by 3D Connection, makers of the Space Navigator. To learn more about them, visit www.3dx.com. Hey there guys, and welcome to another episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox. I'm Cameron Harris, and this is episode number 20. Today we're going to be talking about a very interesting tool in Sketchup, the Follow Me tool. Now this is a little bit more of an uncommon tool. You're not going to use it very much, but when you do use it, it is going to be a lifesaver. Let me show you exactly how you can use it. So today we're going to start working with the Follow Me tool, which is sort of a specialized tool in SketchUp. There aren't very many instances where you're going to use it, but when you do end up using it, it is an absolute lifesaver. It is just a fantastic tool, but it is really kind of complex and a little bit odd to use. It's one of, if you ask me, it's one of the least intuitive tools in SketchUp, but it's still very easy to use once you kind of wrap your head around it. So what we're going to be using the Follow Me tool for today is making molding. So we're actually going to be putting baseboards around the edge of our floor in our living room. Now, again, if you haven't been following along with us and you don't have this living room model to work with, you can either work with your own model or you can download this model as is from our website. So for our baseboards today, what we're going to want to do is we are going to use the Follow Me tool to make just a very thin 3D strip of some white wood around the edge of the entire room. Now, the Follow Me tool is sort of functions very much a lot like the push-pull tool, but with one major difference. So with the push-pull tool, for example, let me just show you what I mean here. If I were to want to make some molding for this room, what I might do is I might draw basically a quick little rectangle right here, something like that, just very rough, and then I would use the push-pull tool to drag it out, right? And then I would, of course, color that white. But at the moment, you'll notice that it is just, for one thing, it's too big just because I was being very rough with it, but that's just that one wall. It's fine for that, but what if, I want to have it go through, not just this wall, but go all the way around the perimeter of the room? How do I handle pushing and pulling it in multiple directions at the same time? There's really no way to do that with the push-pull tool, but with the Follow Me tool, there is. Think of it as the push-pull tool on steroids. So the first thing you need to do is, of course, have something to push or pull, which in this case, for molding, I would draw a quick little rectangle right here like I was doing. But then the Follow Me tool, unlike the push-pull tool where you grab it and you either push it out or back. Those are the only two directions the push-pull tool can go. The Follow Me tool actually uses a path, which you create using lines in SketchUp. So, for example, I would select all of the lines. So I would select this line and all of these lines that border the room. These lines would be the path of the molding. So I want the molding to go all along these blue lines here, go all the way back. I would just keep on selecting, and then I would use the Follow Me tool, and the Follow Me tool would basically automate the process of using the push-pull tool to go bing, stretch it across this way, this way, this way. It handles all the transitions. It's really a very, very powerful tool. But there are a couple things that you want to consider before you start using it. You kind of have to prepare everything for the Follow Me tool just to kind of save yourself some time and trouble down the line. The first thing, of course, is that the molding is not part of the wall. It is something that is attached to the wall. So what we need to do is remember groups. If we make the molding right now, so like for example, if I were to just use my kind of crude push-pull method on this, drawing this, then using the push-pull tool and pulling this out like that, Again, I'm keeping it big just so you can kind of see what I'm doing. If I wanted to delete this molding later, well, I can't really select just that molding. I'm going to select other parts of the wall, and if I delete it, I get this. It just kind of destroys everything. Because, as I mentioned in the groups episode, things that are ungrouped, which this wall, as you can see, is all my walls are ungrouped right now. They're just in the raw line and face mode. If I do another raw line and face drawing on top of that, which is what my molding is going to be at first, they're going to be basically permanently glued together, and it's going to be almost impossible to separate them, particularly when you have all these angles going on. It's going to be really, really difficult, if not impossible, to separate them, either to remove them or even just edit them. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that anything that you're molding is going to come in contact with, unless you want it to stick to something permanently. If, for example, if you wanted it to stick to your wall and floors permanently, go right ahead and go and use it in the raw line and face mode. But in this case, I don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of my walls and my floor, because the molding is going to touch the floor as well, just by triple clicking. Remember, click once to select a single object, click twice on a face to select that face and all the lines surrounding it, and triple click to select everything that is attached. All raw line and faces are going to be selected because I've triple clicked. These are all connected, and you see I've got all my walls, all my floors, nothing is excluded. Now I'm going to right click on those and say make group from the drop down menu. And you can see now I have grouped basically the walls and the floor, the basic foundation of my room. So you can see if I click once, it selects all of them. And now what I can do is I can use my very crude molding method, pull these out, and you can see that it looks pretty much the same. It's white now, but it looks pretty much the same, except that if I triple click on it, it only selects the molding, not the entire room. So that's very nice. So that's step one. Now step two is actually drawing the face that is going to become the molding. So what you want to do is you want to pick a point that is either going to be, it's easiest to do it at either the start or the end of your path. So I'm actually going to be doing two individual paths here because I want the molding to start here, right at the edge of this doorway, and continue all the way around the room until it gets to this edge of the doorway here. That's going to be one path. And then I'm going to do another one that starts here and goes all the way around to the other side of that doorway there. That way I leave the doorways clear, no molding there, but I get molding on all the other walls. So I'll do the first one, I'll do this kind of outer one. So you want it to start at either a beginning or an end point of that path. So my path is going to begin here, and it's going to end over here. So I'm actually going to start my drawing right here. Now what you want to do, if you position your camera like this, what you would expect to see with molding is you would expect to see kind of the profile shape right here, right? And that's what you want to draw. You don't want to draw anything 3D, you just want to draw a 2D face of a side view of your molding. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the line tool. The rectangle tool is going to work quite as well for me here. So I'm going to use the line tool here. And I want to start by clicking on this corner here and drawing a line out like this. Now this is going to be this is going to say how thick my molding is going to be, which I don't want this to be too thick, maybe 1/4 of an inch. So what I'll do is I'll just say 0.25. 0.25 will be 1/4 of an inch. And I'll hit enter. And now I've got that nice 1/4 of an inch line right there. You can see it's pretty small, but that's what I want because molding isn't very thick. And now I'm going to lock my line orientation so that I can only draw an up and down line. And I'll do that by hitting either the up arrow or the down arrow to lock my lines into the blue axis, right? And I want this molding to go up maybe, let's say 3 inches. So I'll type in 3 and hit enter. And now I've got that line right there. Now I could just draw a line here and back to the wall and just finish it. But then I would just have some rectangular molding. Not very exciting. I would really like to have it actually kind of angle back a little bit here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to undo that last line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click here, and instead of having the line go straight back, I'm actually going to have it go back at an angle. And this is how steep of an angle is entirely up to you. That kind of looks nice to me, so I'll click that. And you'll notice that we now have kind of a profile of what our molding is going to look like, but the profile is see-through. There's no face there. And that's because, remember, we grouped these walls. So under normal circumstances, you would think, well, the rules of Sketchup state that if you enclose a face on all sides by lines, a face will automatically be created. Well, look at this. We've got lines surrounding on all sides. We've got this line here, and this line here, and this line here, and this line here. But that line is part of a group. As such, it doesn't affect this raw line and face model that we're creating out here. So what we need to do is we actually need to redraw this line by clicking up here at this point, drawing right down. And although it looks exactly the same, it creates a face. SketchUp now sees that there is an actual line there. You see if we click it, it selects that line, not the group. So we've got that, and we now have a face. You need to have a face to use the Follow Me tool. You can't just use raw lines. So now we've got a nice profile of what our molding is going to look like right at the point where we want it to start. So the next step to use the Follow Me tool, I know this is a lot of setup before we even start using the tool, but bear with me, it's going to save you a lot of time in the future. The next step is to figure out what path we want it to use. So I've figured out before that I want my path to go along here, along the edge of this wall, all the way back to the other side of the room. So what I would need to do is I need to actually use lines, not faces, but lines, to create a path for the Follow Me tool to use. So that way it would basically say, okay, you've selected these lines for the path. I will follow these lines until I get to the end, and then I'll basically push and pull your face that you're having me use just all the way along that path. Now again, you might think, okay, well that's perfect. We've already got these lines here, but those lines again are grouped. And a Follow Me path needs to be in the same group as whatever face you're using it with. So we couldn't go into this group like this and select those lines. It needs to be out here in this main group where we have our face right here. So what we need to do is, just like before, we need to redraw these lines. So we'll just use the line tool, and because we're using existing lines, it's actually going to be very easy. We can just basically trace it. If you're drawing these from scratch, just draw them from scratch, same thing. Just make sure that you're using accurate measurements and everything when you're creating the outline. So we'll just click here at this starting point, and we will move on down to that corner. And you'll notice that because we haven't enclosed this line, the line tool automatically figures, okay, you must want to just keep creating lines. So it did create this line right here, but we can just keep on clicking more points until we're finished. It's kind of like connect the dots almost. So we can just zoom over here past the table and over to this corner here, click at that corner, keep going. We will find this corner behind the couch right here, click once here, and now to stop drawing these lines, what we'll do is we'll just hit the escape key, and that will cancel that last line. And now what we can do is, if we go back to the very beginning of our path, you notice it doesn't look any different because the lines are in the exact same, the lines we just created are the exact same lines that are in this group here. So we can't see any difference, but there is a difference as far as SketchUp is concerned, because if we select that line, we can now select just that line, not the whole group. So what we can do is we can just use the shift click to keep on selecting these, and also make sure that you don't accidentally select the group. You want to just keep watching that. And it's very nice that SketchUp outlines or highlights the lines that you've selected in blue. It makes it very easy to see what you're doing. So that's done. And now we are ready to go. So we have selected all of the lines that we want. So this is going to be our path. The lines highlighted in blue is going to be the path for this molding that the Follow Me tool is going to use. It's going to go all the way around. And when it reaches this point right here where the line stops, it's just going to stop drawing. So now what we do, we have all these lines selected. Now only when you have your face created and all of the lines for your path selected do you switch to the Follow Me tool, which unfortunately doesn't have a keyboard shortcut. You can put it in your toolbar here, but to find it, it's up in the Tools menu here. Just go to Tools and then Follow Me. Or if you have your palette open, it's over in the palette as well in this area here. This guy right here, kind of hard to describe but what exactly it is, but that's the Follow Me tool. So I'll just go ahead and click on that. And you'll notice that when I clicked on the Follow Me tool, it deselected my path. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because it deselects your path, but it knows where that path was. So it has basically taken whatever lines were selected, and it has saved that in its memory so that it knows, okay, whatever face you have me click on next, I will have it follow along that path. So the next step is to use the Follow Me tool, go down to our molding right here, and you'll notice that when we hover over the molding, it gets that kind of dotted effect on it. That means that we're hovering over it. We can click on it and select it. Make sure that this is the face that you drew for your molding, and click once. This is where it gets very cool. Look at all that the Follow Me tool did. It took the molding, just that little two-dimensional outline, mind you, and extruded it all along this path right here, all along to this point, at which point it just stops. And you'll notice even at the corners, look at what it did. It even managed to make it so that it's actually at an angle, a perfect angle right at the corner. You can imagine how long this would have taken you to do manually. You might think, well, it's kind of a big deal. It's a lot of effort, to do this. You gotta, make sure everything's grouped. You gotta draw your path, and then you've got to select your face. That's a lot of work for this. But in reality, this is going to save you so much time down the road. Now, one thing that I do want to point out is you'll notice that the molding is purple. And that's because I covered this in a previous episode, but I just want to kind of re-emphasize the point again, is that faces, when you first create faces in Sketchup, which these have just been created, so they don't have any textures or colors applied to them, these faces have two sides to them. There's one side which is intended to be facing out, and that side is colored white. Then there's the back side, which is supposed to be facing in. You're never supposed to actually see that, and that side is this purple color. Now, with the Follow Me tool, it's kind of unpredictable as to whether it's going to have the sides facing right side out or right side in, which is the case here. But there's a very easy way to fix this. It's kind of a small detail. It doesn't actually affect the structure of your model, but I really like to make sure that you have the white side facing out. And this is where you'll see the benefit of grouping everything before we made this molding. I can just triple click on the molding here, and it selects all of the molding but nothing else. None of the walls, none of the furniture, none of the floor, nothing. And it selected all of these faces that have their right sides facing in. So now what I can do is I can right click on the molding, and you see this command right here that says reverse faces. If we click that, you notice they all turn white. I'll just deselect and you can see they're all white. Now that means that for one thing, we have the right sides facing out, but also that's exactly the color that I wanted for my molding. And there's just one last step here. You'll notice that the angle that we created, when it extruded it into 3D, we now have this line, this hard line, that basically means that we have not a right angle, but a hard angle right there. We can actually make it so that that angle, instead of going straight back like that, actually looks like it's curving. And we do that using the erase tool, which I talked about this when we did our episode on curved lines. When we modeled this couch over here, you'll notice that we have this curved part right here. If you look closely, those are actually just straight lines. But we don't have those black lines that are kind of extruded all the way across here. We smoothed those out using the eraser tool. So let me show you what we can do with that. Instead of, I'll go ahead and hit E for the eraser tool. Instead of just erasing, so like if I just drag over this line right now, it deletes it. And then it deletes those front faces as well. That's not what I want to do. I want to hold down the Option key or the Alt key before I start dragging. And when I do that, it's going to switch it into the Smooth tool or the Soften tool, depending on who you ask. And if I just drag over that one line, look at that. It makes it look, it applies the shading and everything like that, and it makes it look like it is actually a nice, smooth curve. And yet, instead of having to use the Arc tool for that and adding all this extra detail that we didn't really need, that's going to slow our model down, we still have just the sharp corner on the edge, but it looks very smooth all the way down. So I'm just going to do this for the rest of the molding. And you can see this really just makes it look so much nicer, so professional. And oops. And we want to keep this nice hard corner right here. Makes it look like, very real, because that's what real molding looks like. And just one last one right here. And that's it. We're done. The last step for me, just to kind of put a nice little ribbon on the package, if you will, is to just triple click it to select all the molding, right click on it, and choose Make Group. And now we've got a very nice piece of molding all the way around this side of the room. Nice and soft, has nice shading, and it just really makes it look so much more professional, very finished. Now, just to let you know, there is one thing you have to keep in mind. When you're using the Follow Me tool for molding like this, make sure that your room is finalized. Not necessarily all the furniture, like you could keep moving the furniture around all you want, but make sure that you're not planning on editing this room later. Make sure you're not planning to push this wall back a little bit or changing the shape of the room hardly at all, because then you're going to have to pretty much redo all this molding. You can go in and edit it, but it's really kind of a pain to do. It's easier just to redo it. So it's best to leave this step until the very end, when you're just kind of wrapping your model up and putting all the little finishing details on it. Now next up, we're going to do the same molding procedure on the other wall right here, but I'm going to show you a slightly different technique for that. But first, I want to thank the people who are making this show possible, 3D Connection. They're the guys who make the Space Navigator, which is my preferred way of navigating in SketchUp. It really makes the whole thing just so intuitive and really kind of fun. It's almost like using a joystick to navigate through your model, rather than using keyboard shortcuts and switching tools all the time and using your mouse, which gives you very, for one thing, slow, but also very jerky and imprecise movements. The Space Navigator is incredibly fluid, very smooth movements, and it's very, very fast because there's no switching tools. You can stay in whatever tool you're in, never have to switch over into any of the navigation tools like the Orbit tool or the Zoom tool. Just use the Space Navigator. If you want to see my full demonstration of the Space Navigator, I'd love to refer you back to Sketchup episode number 16, where I actually have devoted the entire episode to just talking about the Space Navigator. I've been using this thing for almost 2 years now, and I have never looked back. In fact, when I move over to another computer on SketchUp and it doesn't have a Space Navigator, switching back to those old navigation tools just feels so archaic. If you want to learn more about the Space Navigator or figure out where you can get one for yourself, be sure to visit 3D Connection's website, which is www.3dx.com. I want to thank them so much for their support of SketchUp, a 3D toolbox. Now, getting back to our molding here, as I said, what I just showed you is kind of the easy way of using the Follow Me tool. But there's another way that doesn't require as much preparation, but I'll show you why I'm not as big of a fan of that method as I am of selecting all the paths and then using the tool. But I'll show you what I mean. So going down here, I want to do basically the same procedure that I did with the molding on these walls on this wall over here, which means I need to have another kind of profile face of my molding to put right here. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm actually going to just copy this face from my molding. So I'm going to double click on the group to go in and edit it. And then I'm going to double click on this side face. This is my profile face that I started with. And you see when I double click on the face, it selects the face and all the surrounding edges that go with it. And what I'm going to do is I am actually going to copy it. I'm not going to use the move tool as a copying tool, like, I could go like this, but that's going to keep it within this group. So what I want to do instead is I actually want to just use the Command C or Control C if you're on a PC to copy it. You can also, of course, use the copy command up in the edit menu if you want. And then I'm going to get out of there. I'm going to move over here, and I'm going to paste. Command or Control V, or going up to the edit menu and choosing paste, will paste this face back in. And now I have an exact duplicate of that face that I can then now position wherever I want. Now, of course, I have no control of what handle, what point I'm actually grabbing it by. And as you can see in this case, I'm grabbing it by the outer point, which isn't very useful. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click to set it down here. And then I'm going to grab it by this bottom corner right here, move it back, line it up with this corner right there, and done. That looks great. Now I'm just going to reverse the face so I have the white side facing out, and I'm good to go. So now the next step is this method still requires me to retrace the lines for the path that I want to use. Because they're again still grouped, so the Follow Me tool can't see them if I'm out here. It can't use them. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and switch to the Line tool, and I'll just retrace these. Just real quickly here, move over to this corner. Move over to this corner. You can see how easy it is to navigate through all these legs and things like that with the Space Navigator. It just makes it so fluid and so easy, and you don't have to go through walls like you usually do with other navigation tools. So I've got all those lines drawn, and now, normally, if I were using the same method that I used last time, I would select all these lines, so go through, select all of them, and then just click once on the face with the Follow Me tool, and it would kind of do everything automatically. However, there is another method that I am not as fond of, but I'll show you how it works just so you can take a look at it for yourself. What you do is making sure you have nothing selected, and a good way to do that is just kind of click off in this kind of green and blue background area out here, deselect everything, click on the Follow Me tool, and then again click once on the face. But you notice that this time nothing has really happened. Instead, I'm actually very much like the push-pull tool, where you click once and then you can drag it forward and backward, out and in like this. What you do is you just actually drag it along the path, along any path you want, manually with the Follow Me tool. Now this allows you to choose your own custom path without having to go through and select it all. But I'm not as big of a fan of this method because, as you can see, it actually takes just as long sometimes to go through with this method than it would to just select the face, all the lines manually. And also, when you finish it, it looks fine, right? But honestly, I was extremely lucky in this case. It takes quite a bit of coordination and skill to get it to go like this. In fact, I can't actually believe I was able to do that. Let me show you what I mean. In this case, because these are the only lines that the Follow Me tool can latch onto, it was pretty easy. But if this was not grouped, which there are times when things will not be grouped, let me show you what I mean. I will draw a quick line right here, just to make it as if there was a line there that was, not grouped for some reason. If I switch to the Follow Me tool with this guy, and I'm going along here, it's just as easy to go up like this. along this line, then go like this. And once you start going up this path, it's kind of difficult to get back to this method. And if you do make a mistake, you've kind of got to start over. So honestly, I really prefer the method of just going through, taking the time to select your face manually. That way, if you make any mistakes with your selection, no big deal. You just deselect that particular line or object. You aren't actually creating your molding or your objects at the moment. And once I've got that selected, switch to the Follow Me tool, click once, and you're done. That is really it. So I really do prefer that method, and admittedly, the method where you're actually kind of dragging the face along the path yourself is probably a little bit more like what was intended to be the typical use of the Follow Me tool, because that really kind of, that is what the tool is called, Follow Me. And if you do it where you're actually dragging it, it really is following your cursor around. But selecting the path manually and then just having it automatically go through all those lines instantly is way easier. It actually takes less time in most cases, and you're going to be way more accurate with it. So the only thing left to do with this guy here is to just smooth out these faces right here. Triple click, group, and done. So now you can see I've got some nice molding running all the way around my living room. It's a very nice finishing touch. And keep in mind, this is not just intended to be used just for molding. All right, this could be used for almost anything. Admittedly, yes, decorative touches like this that kind of surround the entire room, it is used quite a bit for that. You could, for example, create crown molding that would go all the way around the edges here. You could create borders along windows here. You could do kind of a fancy molding around the outer sides of these windows if you wanted to. Where the Follow Me tool really kind of pays off is when you have, if this was just a big straight line, the Push-Pull tool would be way easier. But in this case, because we have all these corners and everything, look at this detail that it's done right here. You need a lot of skill and a lot of time to be able to model something like that much detail, and at all of these corners. I mean, this molding alone, this is a pretty simple room, and we have 1, 2, 3 corners on that side of the room alone. So it really, really pays off to go through, draw the path, select the path, and then select your face and just have it do all of that automatically for you. So as you can see, the Follow Me tool is a little bit complex to use, and it does require a little bit of setup before you can actually use it, but it will save you a ton of time down the road. And it is really great for these kind of detail-y things like molding, frames, borders, anything you can think of practically that you want to duplicate across a path. Now, until next time, be sure to visit our website at www.harwoodpodcast.com. There we have show notes, lesson files that you can download, all kinds of great stuff. And if you have any questions or comments for me about the show, you can send me an email at cameron@harwoodpodcast.com. Until next time, I'll just say goodbye and good modeling.